Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling, and a very special guest, once again returning, the one and only Martin Popoff, or is it our avatars? Hmm. And as people may have thought, very lifelike. And the reason that I've got Martin here, we're talking about one of his more recent books, Kiss at 50. This is a big beast of a book here, and it's really, really cool. This is basically 50 events in Kisstory, and it's serendipitous that we're having this conversation now, given everything that went on as we're filming this the previous weekend and the big announcement. I don't know if you call it a big announcement, but welcome once again, Martin. Thanks for doing this. And yeah, let's talk about some Kiss here.
Sure, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
So I guess before we get started, I mean, since you did the book, they did the big show at MSG, and then this announcement came out with the avatars. And as of we're recording this, we really don't know what this means. My friend Matt thinks it's to be used, so people can purchase them as video game characters or things like that. Yeah, it seemed kind of anticlimactic because everybody was thinking, "Oh, this will be the announcement for the big officially sanctioned tribute." And what was your? I mean, I know you talked to Pete on Sea of Tranquility about it, but were you a little underwhelmed by that big announcement, or was it kind of what you were expecting them to do?
Yeah, when I talked to Pete, that hadn't happened yet. So that was more about just the end of the band, and we went through the set list and stuff.
Right.
But yesterday I did do a Contrarians episode.
That's right. I was getting
Just
those mixed up. I knew you had
yeah,
talked about it.
it was pretty centered on the whole Avatar thing, and yeah, I think we're confused as to what's happened. I don't know any more today than I knew yesterday. Although I've read a lot of comments, and people are just scathingly negative about the whole idea. And you're right, it's there was a weird sense of anticlimacticness to it because number one, it's at the end of a concert, right? So it just felt really weird. It's like here the concert's over, kiss, and like you almost want to end just on that. And they even really drew out the long goodbye at the end a long time too. The standing there and the throwing the sticks and all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, it's weird. It's like at the shuffling out moment sort of thing, the shuffling out of the auditorium kind of thing, right?
Well,
Um,
they should have at least let the people that watched the concert, whether it was home, at home or there, give them a week or so. Let them go to bed and say, hey, and then midway through the week say big announcement and Kiss Online midnight Saturday or something.
yeah,
Not it's like, by the way, you're tired, you got to drive home. Oh, you
yeah.
got to wait to see what we got to tell you, and then it's that.
Yeah, and there's lots I don't understand about it. I mean, especially the music side of it. You've got pictures, you've got music, right? So the music side of it, I mean, if they're just going to use recorded shows they've recorded themselves that are or aren't on YouTube, doesn't really matter. But wouldn't you rather just go to YouTube and watch a live performance of Kiss? There's many of them there, complete ones with the actual band playing for your entertainment purposes. Or maybe they're going to figure out how to do something that is truly marketable and something that people might want to do pay per view or go into a theater on. One thing I said yesterday that I didn't finish the thought on was I have this idea with all these bands, and I did a history in 5 songs with Martin Popoff audio podcast episode about crazy ideas, and one of them was based around this idea of sing the phone book, use those voices while you still have them and stuff.
Yeah.
And in terms of crazy things I've thought of is like I would go to the theater for something like we've swapped the tapes of Welcome to My Nightmare and Destroyer, and we had Alice sing all of Destroyer, and we had Gene and Paul sing trade off all the vocals on Welcome to My Nightmare and stuff like that, right? Like this idea of use those voices while you still have them in a controlled environment,
Yeah.
in a studio, and then present it to people. So I'm sure there are tons of things they could do that would make people do a pay per view on it, or into a theater situation. I mean, theater even feels a little old school these days, right?
Yeah.
But say pay-per-view, pay somehow to get this, some sort of subscription service or whatever. Like, we are actually doing really cool things that the fans want. This, I don't know, it feels a little bit like a Saturday morning cartoon kind of
They
thing.
don't even look that good.
Yeah, well, that was
Unless
the other
those are
thing.
unless
Yeah,
those are just, I don't know, like placeholder pictures. I don't know, but I
but you
mean,
should
we've
never
seen
show it, right?
no, we've
Because
seen the pictures of them behind the scenes making them, so it's almost begging to me to be anticlimactic. I mean,
yeah.
the funny thing is, ABBA did this a couple years ago,
Mhm.
but they actually put a new album out too. And I'm one of those crazy people, and I know you are too. More music, more new music, guys. Like,
Yeah.
while you can. I mean, it's a little bit like, Freddie Mercury when he knew he was dying. He just sang. He sang three takes of everything, and he's like, "Do what you will with it."
Yeah.
And that's what Gene and Paul should be doing. They. You're right. I mean, we've only got these guys for a certain amount of time. As you know, that they're. As of filming this, we just lost Miles Goodwin from April Wine. I mean, our rock and roll heroes are they're getting older, and they're not only are they passing away, but they're just getting so they physically can't do it anymore. I think now, like you said, in a controlled environment in the studio, I think we could still get a decent sounding vocal out of Paul. I think the same thing about Geddy Lee.
Yeah.
If they're going
I
to
know.
do anything, don't go back out on tour. You don't worry about killing yourselves doing that. Put a new record out. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
but I know
Yeah.
we're in the minority there, and they want something that they can market and put probably a minimum amount of work in it. But
Yeah, and all these bands, I mean, that's the key thing. And new music is a lot of work for them. But the thing that all these bands keep saying is there's no money in new music. It's just we're gonna be paid pennies on Spotify, and it's gonna be for basically for free everywhere. And they're right about that, right? And physical is an anachronism kind of thing. But the point is maybe there's no money in it, but you're not gonna lose money on it.
I
You're
was going to
still
say, it's not like you've got to pay the high overhead of going to Electric Lady Studios anymore. I mean, most of
yeah,
these guys have home studios. They can demo things up. They can send the files back and forth on Dropbox or whatever it is that they use,
yeah.
and put this music together. Or somebody, Gene or Paul must have a rehearsal space. I mean, there's
Yeah.
no clock ticking because it's their own. It's just power bill, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's so you're not going to get paid like you did in the old days. Big deal. You're rich anyways.
Yeah.
The fans would love it. It's your biggest validity as an artist is the art you make, right? It's like I've always been that way. Bands tend to feel their lives are playing live, right? So they feel like as I move through my 70 years as a meat puppet, right? Kind of thing. They feel like they see what they do day in day out and it's playing live. But on the fan end of things, um the records are the big deal, right? Those 12 records you make are literally who you are, way more than your live show. So I think there's this incongruity between or incongruence, whatever, between what they think they are and what the fans would like. Now,
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think, speaking for myself, I don't have $400 to spend because I'd have to travel anywhere to get because they haven't been to Eastern Canada in about 10 years, when they did tour. And, so that's money they're not getting. But I'll spend $20 on a new CD and probably 50 on new vinyl,
yeah.
so they wouldn't be making as much, but I think they'd still be coming. I'd still think they'd be coming ahead in the deal with new music.
Yeah. And imagine if you put that 400 aside or 500 US or whatever, so 700 aside and said I'm going to go out and buy a bunch of physical Kiss product. You can get a lot of product for 500
Yeah,
bucks, right?
yeah, yeah. All those boxes, they can do more box sets. Like the Creatures box set was fantastic. I'm a little surprised they didn't do a Lick It Up one, or at least not by the end of this year, but maybe they will yet.
Yeah.
I don't know. Next year we're coming up on the 50th anniversary of the first two albums, so this, I don't know. Probably what they'll do is they'll do some deluxe alive one, which we've been alive to death, I think.
Yeah.
Other
Well,
than,
that seems to be a given that we would get a live
oh,
album out of
I
this.
would
That's a
like
great idea. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
probably will, and they probably should commemorate this final concert. And
Yeah.
and I tend to think that this very well could be. I mean, just given the age, right? I mean, it's funny when you think about it now. Rewind to 1980, 1982, 1983, when the Who did their first farewell concert. they were all what, mid-30s? Hard, maybe 40. The oldest might have been 40. They were young guys, and here they are. What were they going to do?
Yeah.
I guess make solo albums. But um, now, when you get these guys in their 70s plus, it becomes, I mean, inevitably there will come a last concert, whether you mean it to be or not. But anyway, that's all surface stuff that's happened since. Let's talk about this book. I like how you did the logo where you didn't have to use the actual Kiss logo, but it's sympathetic. It's somewhere in between the actual Kiss logo and
Yeah.
like the German Kiss logo.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this book, for those of you who are thinking, why would I need another Kiss book? This one's got a personal touch to it, which you had talked about this a long, long time ago about how chronicling how your life sort of dovetailed with Kiss's life as an entity. Was that really what you wanted to present? Like you picked 50 events in their history, but you also paralleled them with how you got into the band and what was going on. And how far back were you thinking about this? Because I know that, of all the bands to do a book about Kiss, there's so many Kiss books.
Yeah.
What made you finally decide to said, okay, I'm going to do a Kiss book, but I'm going to do it my way?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I had a purer version of that, which is a shelved book still in my computer about literally making it I never want to do an autobiography. My life's pretty boring. No one needs to hear about it. But I thought, Kiss would be the perfect band to do an autobiography and move through the years because of all the phases they've gone through, and I've been there, since the beginning. I mean, this is one of the few bands. This is actually the number one band I can think of where I can vaguely remember getting new releases earlier than when I was 11 years old in 1974, but it's only one or two. But I definitely remember getting Kiss as a new release, whether it was myself or a buddy. We were there for the new release, and this is the only band I can remember that far back that it's the first album as a new release.
Yeah.
So Kiss has been there with me for my entire woke music fandom, basically, right?
Yeah.
But the funny thing about this book is that I took maybe 10 or 15% of that shelved project vibe and brought it into here. So yeah, so I had to write about 50 career milestones along the way, and one of the big challenges is to keep the word count down to what's been prescribed, right? They tell you very strictly, you got to fit it into this thing. And so every sentence is polished quite tightly like a diamond sort of thing. But the nice thing about it was, every single studio album and live album gets an entry. So there's a lot of my opinion in there, right? And as a cranky, angry Kiss fan, like all of us are, Kiss fans are notoriously angry. It's not all positive what I write in there. So there's a lot of my personal touch throughout, especially in the introduction as well. But down to business, I mean, generally, yeah. The idea was to hit all these milestones. The other interesting thing about this is a lot of the Kiss books are either really inside baseball and done at an indie level, or they're by Kiss themselves. So this has a different look and feel to it. It's quite a corporate look and feel, right? Because this publisher is very big and good and capable and does a beautiful job. My editor over there, Dennis Pernew, is a great music guy himself, and he's the curator on all the pictures and stuff, right? And he's very thoughtful and knows what he's doing in picking all this out. And then they got just first-rate designers as well. So, there's not too many Kiss books out there that have this sort of external, high-level publishing vibe to them. That, like I say, was done externally. They're all done by fans, right? Kind of thing. And I'm a huge fan too. But having said that, it's just got this certain objective look to it, I think. Right.
There's an example of one. This is chapter 23. And I also like the fact that you find a song title to go with them. I mean, this is Eric Carr, Fits Like a Glove.
Yeah, that was something that it's funny. I don't know if other writers who've done any of these at 50 books have done this, but I've done Kiss at 50, AC/DC at 50, Bowie at 75. I got Van Halen at 50 coming, right? but that's something I started just off the top of my head. I thought, this would be kind of cool for the Bowie, and Dennis loved it. He thought it was a great idea. So it's like, okay, well, I think I'm going to do this for every book. And frankly, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun matching up, the titles to those ideas. So
I did the same thing with Unspooled, and when the chapter is primarily on one band,
yeah,
you're like, okay, what can I do here? And
yeah,
when you get just the right one, you're like, yes, that's the one.
yeah,
That's the one. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. And it's fun for Kiss fans because you don't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily match the era. I mean, there's Eric Carr joining in 1980. You
yeah,
got a song from Lick It Up, but it fits. It just
yeah.
literally fits. Um, and what I also like about it is that it's not necessarily events that people might think of as being particularly important, but when you read about them, you're like, yeah, that made a difference.
Mhm.
That made a difference for fans. One thing I was a little surprised by, and maybe I'm remiss on this, but it seems to me like you didn't spend a lot of time, and this kind of, if I'm right about this, it makes sense. You didn't spend a lot of time talking about the 1996 reunion. Um, I think. Am I right about that? No, okay. So there's the convention
There'd
and
be
there's the
something there.
unplugged.
Yeah, there'd be a couple of things
But
there for
it
sure.
goes
Yeah.
from unplugged to Carnival of Souls to Cycle Circus. So
Mhm.
that I think kind of speaks to your, they think the live performance is everything, but really it's the recorded music, because if without the recorded music, what would you be playing?
Yeah.
And I saw them in 96. That's the first time I saw them in Montreal in 96. It was amazing. But yeah, I remember thinking, you know, I just got into the band in the early 90s. I was way late. It was actually repeated plays of Alive 3 that made me realize how many Kiss songs I actually liked. I still think
Right.
Alive 3 is a perfect primer for somebody curious about Kiss.
Mhm.
But I remember thinking, yeah, does this mean the end of new Kiss music? I mean, it didn't, but it kind of did. There wasn't much more to come, considering the years that and the tours that followed.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there are personal touches. It's so funny. I laugh when I read the story about how, your buddy brought Kiss Alive over. You were having a dance, and the girls just left because that's
Yeah.
in my experience. Obviously, I know this band has female fans. I know that, but in my personal experience, um, nothing will clear a room of females any more than putting on
Yeah.
Kiss.
Yeah.
It's just funny, but it is something I did want to mention. I think you're absolutely spot on about the band following you, because Kiss are one of those rite of passage bands. Maybe them and Rush might be the ultimate rite of passage bands for totally different reasons. But what was happening with them and what was happening in your lives, it's easy to make comparisons, because it's like, well, yeah, that came out when I graduated, or oh yeah, I remember that was going on when such and such happened. So it's an easy band to do, but it's also an easy band to do wrong. So I think that you picked 50, you know, worthy events and brought things into focus that I think a lot of the Kiss books haven't. And I like a lot of those fan made Kiss books, like the Eric Carr story by Greg Prato. I mean, all of them add something to the Kiss canon. But
For sure.
yeah, it's this is not your typical. Did you ever think about this would be interesting. Did you ever think about doing like an album by album on Kiss, or would that have just been, how much more can you write about
Yeah, it's
lyrics?
possible that is something that we've I've brought up with the publisher of this one, right? It's funny. I wonder if quite often, like, this book is doing really well, and sometimes I think what happens with Dennis over at the publisher is, um, and I should bring this up with him because I brought it up about doing Kiss. It seems like a given and a no brainer. We've talked about some other bands, and I am in one right now, which I probably shouldn't bring up because I don't think it's been announced yet. But um, I think what goes through his mind sometimes is the amount of work and the amount of satisfaction he's had in curating all the photos, and now here's this dumb author asking him, okay, let's do it again, right? Because
Yeah.
I've noticed that in our relationship in the past with a bunch of these bands, because I've now done 12 or 15 books with Dennis, right? um I think definitely there's a hangover of, I don't want to look at Kiss pictures again, probably is what's going through his mind.
Yeah.
and curating all this over again. And frankly, I've used all my best stuff in the first one. Now it's super hard to have to knock people's socks off with images on the second one, right? So
Yeah. You've
so
said the
it's
same
funny. It's
thing.
almost like I got to give them a little bit of a honeymoon and
Give them
bring it
some
up maybe
time.
in a
Yeah.
year or so.
But you said the same thing about Rush. You're like, you got to the point where listening to Rush felt like work to you
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you'd done the trilogy and worked on the film. And
yeah.
yeah, and
Well, and
maybe,
even with Voyager, it's a good point. I mean, we did Rush the Illustrated
yeah,
History, and then we did Rush album by album, which are, again, go to the same well with the pictures, but Dennis did it. So, but yeah, it's we talked about another Zeppelin project at one point. And I remember one email said, we've done Zeppelin to death. Don't want to do another one. And I think that's more him saying, I've done Zeppelin to death. I don't want to try figure out how to impress people with pictures again or another Led Zeppelin book, right?
yeah. But maybe in 6 months, you might say, you know what? Yeah, let's revisit. You never know.
Yeah,
Sometimes
exactly.
I mean, I think it's just like listening habits. Sometimes you go through phases where you're like, all you listen to is one band, and you're like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I can't listen to them anymore." But after a while, you're like, you start listening to them again. It's just,
yeah.
I think that's pretty natural.
It's interesting. I wanted to bring up, the other poignant part of that story with Kiss Alive is, of course, the fact that my buddy Forrest Toop and I found a massive stack of April Wine 1974, the cover of
Yes.
April Wine Live
Yeah.
posters, and put them all around the basement rec room, right? Like hundreds and hundreds of them, right?
Anybody can picture it's that purplish.
Yes.
You can't
And
really
we
see the
just lost
guys.
Miles
We just,
Goodwin, right?
yeah,
So it's come full circle. Yeah. So that
yeah,
that story in there now, yeah, we've lost Miles at 75, who was, I guess he was a lifelong diabetic, and
yeah,
diabetes gets people eventually, right?
yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
He had only just taken himself off the road and out of the band. So I mean, no original members left. Brian Greenway is the longest running. Um, yeah, there's more. But I want to talk about April Wine more at some point, but we'll let the dust settle there. So yeah, I mean, for those, like Martin said, the book's selling quite well. We were actually going to do this a few weeks ago, but he sold out, which is a nice problem to have. So
Yep.
yeah, martinpopoff.com. Go there, you get your signed copies. That's the best way to do it. And so yeah, Kiss at 50. I highly recommend it. Again, for the person that says I don't need another Kiss book, you should probably check this one out, because I said the same thing, and I looked at I looked at it. I'm like, no, that looks cool.
Yep.
So I know you've always got things on the go. I happen to know of a book that you contributed to that there will be an announcement on very, very soon, which we talked about off camera. But what else is imminent that you can talk about? And again, just basically give the people where can they find you?
Well, the main ones are the main things I'm working on that have been announced through Weimer are the Robert Plant album by album, right? Which you are part of. And let's see, what else do I got? Oh, yeah. So I've got Perfect Water, the Rebel Imaginos, which is the follow up to Flaming Telepaths, Imaginos Expanded and Specified. And it is 10 times as wacky and crazy and conspiracy and occult as the first one is. It's a nutty, nutty book. I had to do 40 illustrations for that again. And that's with my layout guy, Eduardo, right now. And so, yeah, looking forward to that. We've got Thin Lizzy album by album. And I haven't started them yet, although they've been announced already. So I'm a little stressed out, but there's a book through Weimer we're calling Queen Live, which is a whole survey of what they ever did live. And then Led Zeppelin, a visual biography, which for that one, what I'm going to do, all I'm going to do, I think so far is I'm going to do one of my very detailed timelines, because there hasn't been exactly that sort of thing for Zeppelin. And I think we're going to end it at Coda. Rather than go on and do the timeline for the rest, but we'll see how that goes. So yeah, lots on the go. And one that's more or less finished that I can't talk about, but I was adding it up, and I think there's seven books coming out next year. And a lot of them are, finished or half finished or in the works. So yeah, typical sort of year, quite a bit coming down the pipes.
Awesome. And as always, you can check Martin and sometimes me on the Contrarians, doing some good content there. Wednesday night album cover discussions. Those are always fun, and I always find them amusing as well. History in 5 songs with Martin Popoff. Martin takes a topic and gives five songs that go along with the topic. I highly recommend checking that out. And yeah, martinpopoff.com. That's where you go for all Martin's books, and get them from there. Don't get them from anywhere else. Get them signed. Do it right. And so yeah, Kiss at 50. That's what we're talking about today. And I'm sure we'll have Martin on to talk about something else down the pike, a couple of things he's already mentioned. So, Martin, thanks for coming on.
Yes,
And
thank you.
yeah, we will see you all later. Thank you for watching this episode of Tim's Final Confessions. Go get Kiss at 50 and put on some Kiss.